I'm going to give just, a high level overview of all these different things. And Ralph said that there's a likely opportunity that I could come back later in the year and do a deeper dive in any of those. So I will take questions as I'm going, and I'm thinking maybe, Ralph, the best way to do that is to take them in the chat, and then you can interrupt me so we're not getting it from all angles.
Okay.
And so if you have a question, put it in the chat. Ralph will interrupt me when it's appropriate, and I'll answer that question. If any of your questions are feeling like it would take me down a rabbit hole that I might not come out of tonight, then we'll table that for the next presentation. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Now I have two monitors here. You're here. And my presentation's over here. So you're going to be looking at the side of my head for a good part of this. And we're going to start with Lightroom Classic. Let me make sure that I have my chat open so I can see that. Okay. So you should be seeing a funky monkey. You guys all see the image here? So we have Lightroom Classic open.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to start with something that you probably was hoping I was going to talk about, and I'm not going to because I really haven't gotten into it. And that is this new HDR button. So this is real new. We're talking new for Lightroom Classic is the ability to edit in HDR. Well, what that means is it's not a multi-bracketed image. It's expanding the dynamic range of the histogram that you have to work with. Now, that only works if you have an HDR enabled monitor, which I don't. So I haven't gotten into it myself. I'm going to switch over to Chrome here. Oh, where did it go? Let me see. I thought I was all prepared. Let me switch over to Chrome. Okay, so I'm going to take this and put it in the chat. If you're interested in this HDR and you haven't already come across this, your message is too long. Link copied. Oh, I guess the link is too long for me to send it to you. Go to the Adobe blog and search High Dynamic Range Explained. And this is a really fantastic blog about what HDR is all about. And the really cool thing is if you're reading this blog with Chrome, it doesn't work in Safari, but if you're reading this in Chrome and you hover over a picture and the image becomes super vibrant, it completely changes, then you know your monitor has HDR. This monitor doesn't. It's not changing for you. So my MacBook Pro does work, and it's really amazing. These images look completely different in HDR, but the limitations are there's really no point to editing in HDR if you don't have an HDR monitor. There's limitations in how you can share that HDR image, and you're never going to get the same quality in a print. So all of that to take into consideration. So let me go back to Lightroom here. And we'll move on to the next new thing, which is lens blur. And lens blur is down here. It says early access. I don't know if that means they think it's still like beta or whatever, but it should be in all of your applications. And lens blur, well, let's just zoom in here. This background's a little bit soft, but it's also pretty busy, right? If I turn on lens blur, it should analyze the image and soften that background in a way that looks pretty darn realistic. Do you see how that went? If we take the blur up even more, we can really soften that out. See how much stronger that looks. You have controls over the bokeh. I don't know how to say it. I find the first one and the last one have the best effects. And you have controls over how broad the range is. And if you want to visualize it, turn this on here. And the yellow is what is in focus, what it's choosing to put in focus. And then it goes from yellow to this like deep purple. And that would be where the blur is getting applied. And you can see it's maybe, it's having a hard time discerning what's going on here, but it still does a pretty amazing job. And let's see if we turn this back on. This is all non-destructive because we're working with a raw image. So it's very powerful. Let's take a look at this one too. This one's a little bit tougher because everything's kind of already soft and it's all similar colors. But I found even with this image, it did a pretty nice job. So if you have an image and you wished you had, shot with a different f-stop, you might want to give this a try. You don't have any control over actual masking though, as you would have in Photoshop. So that would be the limitation here is you're kind of stuck to these slider things, right? It's not like you can go in and paint it. Now you can come in here. I'm trying to remember, there was a place on here to pick something. Yeah, here it is. This little target. I love how Adobe makes these super tiny little icons. Like they don't even give us any respect. All of us that have aging eyes, they don't develop their software for us. So there's this little target here, and let me zoom in. If I click here, it's going to say that's the spot I want to be in focus. And this over here is out of focus. So pretty amazing. I don't know if it's ready for prime time yet. If I was blurring something like this and I was going to print it, I'd probably use Photoshop because we have more masking controls there. It's still pretty darn amazing though. Any questions on that, Ralph? Anybody have any? No? Okay, so let's move on to point color, which is another new this year or since the fall of last year. And point color it's like color mixer on steroids. Let's switch to mixer. This is what we've had for a really long time. And I use color mixer on pretty much every image I edit. If I'm working on a landscape, I'm going to adjust the sky a little bit by adjusting the blue slider. It's pretty powerful because it is targeting color. So for example, if you haven't used mixer before, you can adjust the hue, the saturation, or the luminance. And I almost always play around with luminance. Like we could come in here and say, make the orange guitars a little bit brighter, maybe make the greens a little bit darker. And we also have a target adjustment here where we can click right on a color and go up or down. Now, that's pretty powerful, but point color is taking this to a whole other degree because we can have multiple points on it. Let's say, let's do the green color here. So I'm targeting the green. I can see here where the target is in the color. And if I adjust the hue, this is the target. I don't know if you can see that little dot. And this is the color that it's getting adjusted to. So we can adjust all of those right here. And we can add more points. I come down here and I want to maybe make the red a little bit brighter. Let's take a look at this bus too. Skies are something that I almost always adjust somewhat, maybe saturate it a little bit, darken it down. And what's nice about this is if you come down here and you open up the range, you can control the range of what it's targeting in the hue, saturation, and luminance. So if we want to make this broader, I can spread this out, and it's showing us up above here in the color, in this color block, exactly how broad that range is. So that's really good for getting rid of some of this fringe around the edge. Let's do this. See how sometimes you get that kind of white halo? If you adjust the saturation range, you can extend that a little bit. So you have a lot of power with this. I have barely scratched the surface on what I can do, just kind of played around with a little bit. I haven't done a ton of editing yet since it came out. But I definitely recommend spending some time with it. The other really cool thing is you can visualize the range. So that takes everything that's not being impacted by this to black and white, and we can see that the range that's targeted is just the blues in the sky there.
Teresa, a quick question.
Yes.
If there was two different blues, if one of those buses was blue, but you targeted the sky, would
Mhm.
it change the blue on the bus?
It would. Let's do that with the red. Let's target the red back here because there's two different colors of red. And if I take the hue shift, it's moving the hue of both of
Oh,
those.
yeah.
So it is a global color adjustment.
Okay. Okay.
Good question. I thought I'd talk a little bit about masking. Who's using masks in Lightroom Classic? Maybe raise the hand on Zoom or type something in the chat. If you're
I am.
using,
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
you are, Tim's using it. Yeah. If you're using Lightroom Classic, you absolutely should be using these masks. They're a way to have a lot more control over your editing. And I could do a whole presentation just on Lightroom masking. I just want to show you a couple things that you may be overlooking if you're just first getting into it. This is what this edit looked like after I added masks to it. So this is just a global overall, and this is with the masks. And if I open the masks panel, you can see that I have several masks here. If I call these mask containers, that is a Teresa Jackson term, not an Adobe one, but I think of them as containers because if you click on them and don't double click on it, but click here, you'll see that they are actually a container of multiple masks. And what you see here is the sum total of those masks. So you can add to or subtract from the mask. This mask for the background is actually two separate masks combined in that it's not two separate masks, but it's two selections within that container, within that mask container. So that's one thing that's not obvious when you're first starting to use these masks. The second thing is the overlay. Let's go back to the global edit here. And so
Teresa, we had several other people chime in and said they're also using masks.
Oh, that's great. You have to be. And if you weren't before, you're going to be after looking at this. I'm sure of it. The most powerful update that Lightroom's received since it first came out. The next thing, well, I wanted to just start from scratch here, just to show you a couple other things. So I took, using the snapshots, I took this back to just a global edit. It doesn't have any masks on it. So when we go to the masks panel, we don't get a masks panel, we get this panel. The first thing you're probably going to do is click subject because it's going to use artificial intelligence to find the subject of your image. And it does a really, really good job. And in this case, it picked both of the mannequins. And I don't really want to select both mannequins. I only want to select one mannequin. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I wanted to show you here is by default, your overlay is a color overlay and it shows when there's no edit. So if I just take the exposure slider up, notice that the overlay hid. As soon as I take this back to 0, we see the overlay again. That's the default behavior and it's a good one. I like leaving it like that. But I don't really like the mask being in a red overlay because I can't really tell how effective that mask is. But if you click on the 3 dots here for the more options and choose white on black, now we have a really clear picture of what was masked. And we can see it missed the inside of the legs here and it has a soft kind of fuzzy edge around this mannequin. And this is really typical of what happens when you use select subject. So in a case like this, in fact, I would say most of the time when I'm using these masking tools, I'm not using select subject. Instead, I'm using object. So what I'm going to do is back out of this, let's see, or just delete it. Can't remember how to delete it. Let's just do oh, we'll just go to the history. Go back.
Just click on the three dots and it will say.
Oh no, what am I thinking? See, this is what happens when you do a presentation and you talk too fast. I have global edit snapshot. So now we're back to the beginning. Snapshots are fabulous if you're not using them, and that is not new. So it's not part of my presentation, but they are great when I'm presenting. Okay, so instead of using select subject, I'm going to come down here to object. An object allows you to paint over something, and it's using like an edge detect to make the mask. So I'm just going to go around and, I don't have to be accurate, right? I just need to encompass the whole subject that I want to select. And look at there, I missed the shoulder a little bit, but look at how much cleaner this mask is over using select subject, and it selected just the single mannequin instead of both of them. So I never use exposure to brighten because it's too aggressive, but I always use the whites and the shadows to brighten something up like that. Any questions on that? I have so much other stuff. Like I said, I could talk about these all night, but I think those are the features that I kind of stumbled into as I was working on these that have been the most useful for me in using these tools. Change your overlay to black and white. Use object, select object instead of select subject.
Nothing in the chat room, Teresa.
Okay, awesome. I have notes over here that I'm looking at. Adaptive presets. Oh my goodness. These are mind-blowing. They're seriously mind-blowing. So if you're in Lightroom Classic and you go in the develop module on the left-hand side, you'll see presets. And I don't know how many of you are using presets or creating your own presets, or whether you've even opened this panel. But all these ones that say adaptive are using artificial intelligence to read your image and do edits within masks. So adaptive portrait, if we open this, there's a bunch of them. And I'm just going to click on enhance portrait, and it'll take a moment here to read the image. Okay. I don't know if you can see in the Zoom screen that it did edit this image a little bit. It's kind of subtle, so it's hard to see. But if we open the mask panel, all of these masks were created. This one didn't. Let's do glamour portrait instead. Oh, look, I had ran glamour portrait earlier, so it did it really fast. It didn't have to send it up to the cloud. All these masks were created. Maybe the edit in those masks isn't exactly what you want, but look at how much time that saves you. Just pick one of these, and then all your masks are here. Let's see, we have lips, and because I'm hovering over it, we're seeing it in that black and white mode. But if I come off of it and then look at our sliders, I'm not even sure what was done. Oh, it looks like texture was taken down in the preset. But what if we want to make her lips pink, put some lipstick on? That mask was already there, so I could do it really quickly. If I want to brighten her eyes a little bit, this eye sclera, we can take the whites, brighten those up. The face, we can take the texture down even more. You got to be careful though. Let's zoom in on this and see what happens. Facial skin. If we go too far with it, it can look kind of fake. So you got to zoom in and see. Now she looks really fake looking, but you have all the most important takeaway from this is these adaptive presets will automatically generate these masks for you. And if you end up not needing one, you can just click on the three dots and delete it, or you can adjust the edits from there. So I'm curious if anybody had discovered those, because my mind was blown when I found them. That it can't get any easier than this to edit portraits. Okay, one last thing that I wanted to show for Lightroom isn't really that new, but you may have been confused by it or just missed it completely. And that is your content aware heal. So these two buttons here, the heal and the spot heal, or the spot heal and the clone, they've been there for a really long time. Zoom in down here and we'll use the heal. And just as a refresher of how this works, I'm going to make my brush small. If I paint over this, Lightroom is going and sourcing some content to fill that with. And it's pretty smart about it. Sometimes though, if it's sitting like a spot on the edge, it doesn't always pick the right spot. In that case it did, but sometimes it'll pick something that isn't really what you want, and then you get kind of a fuzzy looking edit. So the new tool is using artificial intelligence. Let's come in here. Let's see what happens if I use the old way. Let's paint over this. It's sourcing this, and if it's not lined up perfectly, you know, your shadows and highlights aren't going to work. But if you use this first one, which is the newer one, this is content aware. And let me make my brush a little bit smaller. When you use this, it doesn't pick a source because it's using artificial intelligence to recreate the content of it.
Wow, that's great.
It's really powerful. It can be a little bit slow sometimes depending on it, and it's not as excellent as Photoshop. So for example, let's come down here. Let's say I wanted to get this guy out of here. Photoshop generative fill would take it completely out. You'd probably not even know something was there. But Lightroom's not quite as good. See, there's no way you would get there with the heal tool, but the content aware it's more for taking out spots like these up here. I've got some sensor spots up here. What's nice is that it bumped it up just a little bit. I kind of painted it a little bit further over than I should, just to show you that it can align those edges. So check it out. If you're having some challenges with the healing brush tool not giving you the results you want, which usually happens when things are sitting right next to each other, then try the content aware and it'll probably work for you. But that's what I have for Lightroom Classic. Was there something somebody wanted to see that I didn't show?
Wouldn't know.
The question Mike asks is how content aware is different than Photoshop's remove tool.
Right.
It's just not as good. It is non-destructive. Photoshop's remove tool is destructive. You can do Photoshop's remove tool on a blank new layer and sample all layers, and then the pixels that it creates sits on its own layer. So that's how you would do it non-destructively, but it is generating pixels, where in Lightroom Classic it's not. I don't really know actually how it's doing it, what it's using, but it's completely non-destructive. So I can come back in here at any time and select this and delete it, and that spot is still there. Did that answer your question, Mike? Maybe just put a thumbs up in the chat or something, because I can see the chat over here.
Yes, thanks. I just had to unmute. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Awesome. All right, well, if you guys are good, I'm going to move on to Photoshop. And who's using Photoshop Cloud Docs? Anybody using Cloud Docs? Nobody's using Cloud Docs? Anybody hear about Creative Cloud files is going away, and you wondered what that had to do with your Cloud Docs? Doesn't have anything to do with Cloud Docs. They're completely different way of storing content. So if you weren't using Cloud Docs, it's not an issue at all. If you were, losing Creative Cloud files isn't going to do anything. when you're in Photoshop's home screen here, I'm assuming most of you are on the home. You know, we now have these tabs over here on the left. So this is newish. It's not brand new, but if you've been using Photoshop for decades, like Chuck and I have, this is kind of new. Like, why do I need to have all these locations for my images? It'd be kind of confusing. When you're in the home screen, it's going to show you the recent documents that you've worked on. If you come down here to your files, it's going to show you what you've worked on and everything that's in the cloud. And that includes anything that you do with Photoshop on your iPad. Those of you, I saw a few of you log in with your iPad, so you may be using Photoshop on your iPad. If you're using Photoshop on your iPad, those images aren't stored on your iPad. They're stored in the Photoshop's Cloud Doc. And they have a different name, a different extension. They have, I guess we're not seeing it in the name here. They have a PSDC. The C stands for Cloud Doc. So anywhere where you see PSDC, those images are in the Photoshop Cloud. So that goes for images that come out of Photoshop on the iPad, and it also goes for drawings in Adobe Fresco. I do a lot of Fresco drawing, and so the illustrations that you see here, these actually were done in Fresco, not Photoshop, but they're saved to the same place, Photoshop Cloud Docs. So you might have seen that when you go to save an image, it'll ask you, it even defaults to that, which frustrates a lot of people. They're like, I don't want my images in the cloud. And I get you, I don't put most of mine there either. But sometimes it's really useful. You can also create folders in the cloud. So this is a folder I created for tonight's presentation, and these are some images that I put in there to work with for the Photoshop demo. So these are all Photoshop Cloud Docs in the cloud. And I'll just click on one to open it. And the first thing I want to do is go to the photography workspace. Just so if you're following along, we could be seeing the same thing, because there's all different ways to do your layout. And I'm going to go to panel options, which opens this panel here, and go to the large thumbnail so that you can see it a little bit better. Curious, anybody using Photoshop Cloud Docs? Was that all kind of new? It's not new, but maybe it was. It's not new information, but
No,
maybe it's new for all of you.
not me.
No info on the chat.
You guys are all, what the heck is Cloud Docs? Why do I care? Let me tell you why you care. If you have an iPad, you care, because you can be using Photoshop on your iPad to edit your images. If you have more than one computer, you care. I have a MacBook Pro and an iMac, and a lot of times I will work on things in the evening where I don't want to feel like I'm working. So I'm sitting in my recliner. I'm not sitting in my office. And that's what I did to prepare for tonight's presentation. I wanted to practice on these images, but I didn't want to be at my desk. So I put all the images in the cloud, and then I take my laptop to my recliner and I work there. And I can get to the images because they're in Cloud Docs. I don't have to use Dropbox. You know, they're just there in the cloud. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing that you'll see is this ugly blue button. I guess a lot of people are irritated by that because it's the only thing blue. Adobe's definitely trying to push us towards use of the cloud. Anybody use this? The share? It's actually pretty cool. I have my students, I teach a community college Photoshop class, and I have my students share their work through the share button. So they don't have to use WeSend It or Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever. They can do it directly from Photoshop. So if you click on the share button, if the image isn't already in the cloud, it's going to tell you you've got to put it, it's got to save into the cloud first. This is already in the cloud. So I can just create a link and I could send that link to you guys and you'll be able to open it. I'm just going to go ahead and create a link and then open it so you'll see what that looks like. So it's generating, what it's doing is it's putting it into a place in the cloud where you can actually edit it with a browser. You don't even have to have Photoshop. I think that is the future. Maybe not in our lifetime, but I think these desktop applications are eventually going to go away. I think everything's going to be done. Kind of curious what the rest of you think about that. But I see this happening with applications outside of Adobe. Everybody's moving towards this cloud service. Okay, so we have this. It says we can share it. I can copy the link. I'll come over to Chrome and I'll paste the link in here. Doesn't work with Safari. Photoshop on the web works with Chrome, but not Safari. And with this sharing where it's just general, anybody can look at it. It's not actually editing the image, it's just reviewing it. So I could share this with anybody. They don't have to have a Creative Cloud account. They can look at the image and they can leave comments. They can pin comments to the image. Did you guys know that was possible? It's not new, but it's just not very well used. If you come into this button down here, invite to edit, you have sharing access privileges. So if I change this to change, I can say anybody with a link can view it. And I can also say anybody could save a copy of it. So this is what I have my students do. They come in here, they change these settings. I don't need to give them my Creative Cloud email address. They give me the link and I can just download the file as a Photoshop file. So it's going directly from their Photoshop into the cloud. And then I'm downloading the Photoshop file to my computer so that I can grade it. The other thing that I wanted to show you here is, let's go to Adobe. If you just go to adobe.com and you sign in, I don't know if you've done this before either. If you click up here, you have all your apps and services, including Creative Cloud. So I'm in Chrome. I'm not in the Creative Cloud desktop app, but in Chrome, it looks like the Creative Cloud desktop app, and all my cloud images are here. I could open them in Photoshop from here. I can download them. Let's see, let's take this one here. It should take me into the edit. Yeah. So now I am in Photoshop on the web. So this is newish. They're still working on it. It was beta last year. I don't think it's out of beta now, but it has been around for a while. And look, you even have the taskbar here. So Ralph, you don't have the newest and greatest computer, but you might be able to get into some of these new tools through the browser.
Oh, okay.
I don't know for sure, but you might want to give that a try. So they
Yeah.
haven't, Photoshop on the web doesn't have every single tool that Photoshop has, obviously. It's something that's still being developed. It has more parity with Photoshop on the iPad. They're kind of developing those simultaneously to each other. So cool. I hope that was new for you guys. Let's go back to actual Photoshop. And I wanted to talk a little bit about selections. Again, not super new, but maybe new enough that it's annoying. At least I feel that way. If we come down to object select, this is the object select tool. I forgot to put this back to the default here. Object select tool is a really fantastic tool. It's not brand new. Thinking it's about two to 2.5 years old. The default behavior is that up here in your control bar, this object finder is turned on. And so this happens. Have you guys seen this and gone, what's going on? This drives me crazy. And what it's doing is with Object Finder turned on, with the Object Selection tool active, it is telling you what it sees to make a selection of, which is nice if you've never used Photoshop. You might be like, wow, I didn't know Photoshop could make a selection. Let's click here. With that on, once you click, so now my girlfriend Carrie, who's in the center here, it made a selection of her. It missed her backpack though. But if I hold my shift key down and I click on her backpack, now her backpack, let's go into quick mask mode so we can see that. Go to the tilde and we can see it in black and white. So, you know, it's a very quick down and dirty way to make a selection. However, I find it extremely annoying. This behavior drives me crazy. I'm curious, Chuck, I'm guessing you feel the same, but that's just annoying as heck to have that do this to you.
I don't use that too often.
See, because it's annoying. Before I show you how to turn it off, let me just show you some settings that you have for it. If you click on the gear here, you can change the color. So if you're having a hard time seeing the overlay, you can change the color. You can give it an outline. I think by default, it doesn't have any outline. If you crank this up a little bit, it just shows a halo around what it's selecting. I guess that's helpful. I don't know. But I'm going to show you the way I use this tool as I turn this off. And then by default, I should have reset my preferences here. By default, yours is going to say mode rectangle, which is fine. If I do draw a selection over here, it's going to find the edges. Ooh, that's the best selection that's made yet. The other times I tried it, it missed her poles. So it works pretty well. Most of the time, though, I want a little bit more control over that. So I will switch this to Lasso, and I will just do a really loose lasso around what it is I want selected. Ooh, I can't draw and talk at the same time. As soon as you get all the way back to where you started, it finds the edges and it makes that selection. And you can see that it missed the poles here. I can hold my shift key down and just quickly draw around here and see if it finds them. It did. So this is the tool that I use to start my selections probably 90% of the time now. Instead of using the lasso, I use the object selection tool in the lasso mode with the object finder turned off. And then I can quickly go around and make these selections. You do have select subject up here. Now, the options that you have at the top are dependent on the tool that's active. So if I go to the move tool, those go away. So if you're looking for that select subject, you know what I'm going to do is I did not reset my preferences. So let me quit Photoshop and come back. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to reset everything so that you'll see what the experience is like before you change those settings. I meant to do that before I started tonight. I'm sorry. But while we're relaunching Photoshop, does anybody have any questions, comments? No. This is a good opportunity to show you even more about Cloud. This is the Creative Cloud app, and we have all apps. I can open Photoshop from here, but those images are in the cloud, so I can open the direct image from the Creative Cloud app. You can go right into here because if I tap on files, here's the folder of those images, and here's the image I had open. So let's open this. Should open it, and yeah, it's opening on my computer, on my screen over here, but I'll move it as soon as it's open. Didn't know. I love hearing that, Patrick. You didn't know that. That's great. Now you do. Okay. Other new stuff is this. what the heck is this, right? This takes a little getting used to. If you haven't spent a lot of time working in Photoshop and this thing just starts showing up. It's really useful though. It's the contextual taskbar, and it populates with the things that Photoshop thinks you need to do or want to do, depending on what's currently active or visible. So for example, we just have an image without anything happening here, one layer, and we have the option to select the subject or remove the background. It's guessing that that's what we want to do. And these are really connected to each other. Select subject is here available, even if I don't see it. See, I'm in the move tool. I don't have select subject up here. If I come down to the object selection tool, I do, but it's, oh, there we go. There's that annoying object finder. Turn that thing off. This is always going to be there if you have the contextual task. I think it's the contextual taskbar. If you don't want it, or if it's hidden, you can come to the window menu and turn it on and off. You can also turn it off from here. You can say hide. And then if you want to bring it back, you can come down here and turn it on. Okay, so select subject is the same as select subject up here. And it's going to use its artificial intelligence to determine the subject. And it found all three of the hikers, which is pretty cool, but it missed parts. His hand and the sticks, her hand aren't there. But it, you know, it's good. It's fair to good most of the time. I'm gonna deselect and show you what happens if you pick the second button, which is remove background. I think that's poorly named because remove sounds too similar to delete. And really what remove background is doing, very fast actually, is it's creating a selection and it's converting that selection into a layer mask. And we can see that in the layers panel over here. So if I make this bigger, we can see that it did that in one click of one button. It created a selection, it converted the selection to a layer mask and attached it to that layer. So that's pretty cool to know what that does. If you get tired of this being in the wrong spot, maybe you always want to have it up here in the left-hand side, you can pin it. You know, you can pick a spot that works for you. I've actually kind of been in the habit of hiding it and just turning it on when I want it. But the other thing that I wanted to show you is I'm just going to create a new document here just to show you that it's really smart. I have this is a brand new document, nothing's here, there's no image, and it knows, well, the next step is probably to put an image in there. So the button is import image. So we could place something in there. So it's pretty helpful for that. And I think the contextual taskbar is something that is still growing. It's still evolving. We're going to find more and more features added to the contextual taskbar. Okay, let's close this and go to open, file open. And you've probably seen this menu, and right now at the top, if you're not paying attention, this can be confusing too. You're like, where are all my images? If you're used to opening your images from your hard drive and you don't see them here, it's because you're looking at the clouds. To look at the top of this window, it's saying open from Creative Cloud. Those are the cloud docs. Those are the images that are in this folder here. Or we back out of this, all my fresco drawings and all the different stuff that I've got in the cloud are available here. If I want to get to the images on my computer, I have to click here, and now we're in the, the typical window navigating the Finder or Explorer, Windows Explorer if you're on a PC. But I do want to open from the cloud, so we're going to go back and open this folder, and I was going to work on some generative fill. What image was I going to use for that? Oh, I was going to use this one here. Okay. So this is the stuff that's all over YouTube, and I'm sure you've seen videos on it. So I'm gonna have a little bit of fun with this, but not spend a ton of time on it. I really thought about presenting this not in the magical and fantastical, but as a photographer. How can you use generative fill to improve your images without really changing them? And this may not be the best example of it, but this is really typical for me. You're shooting landscapes and you frame your composition and the trees just don't fill it in, and it's a gray day and you just have this block back here. Now I could crop this out, but let's say I really compositionally don't want to crop that out. Generative AI is going to save this image for me. And so what I would do is go to the selection tool and just draw out a selection. And I'm always paying attention to the pixel dimension of that selection, because currently generative AI is 1080 pixels. If you create a generative AI fill that's larger than that, it's actually creating it at 1080 pixels and then scaling it up, so it'll look really blurry. So you want to keep this somewhere around 1,000 pixels. And again, our taskbar is smart. It's like, oh, I bet you want to do some generative fill there, don't you? So we're going to click generative fill. Oh, this is new. I have to agree to the guidelines. That's because I reset my preferences. Okay, then we have a field here to say what it is we want to generate. If you don't want to do anything but let it figure it out like this, just leave it blank and click generate. And I think if you haven't seen it, I'm guessing you've all seen this because it's all over the place. It's going to create 3 different variations. It puts those variations on their own layer, so it's non-destructive. You can continue to add variations to it. We need some Jeopardy music. Okay, so that one's not great. That one's pretty darn good. What do you think?
Yeah.
If you were judging, would you notice that? Oh, that one's even better. I've used this in some of my photography already. I always zoom in, make sure that we don't have blurry pixels. It looks like the resolution's good. It's matching up. Probably doesn't wow anybody because you've seen this, but I feel like too many of the generative AI demos are trying to do fancy stuff instead of what are you going to do as a photographer? What do you really want to fix? How are you going to use this? This is the kind of stuff that, let's do this. I've tried this a few times with mixed results. And we'll click on generative fill and we'll say Chrome spoked. Oh, I can't type. Let's see what it creates for us. So yes, you can have fun with it, but you can also just simply use it to fix those little problem areas of your image without having to do a bunch of cloning and then having all kinds of, it certainly doesn't look like Chrome. That one looks very much like AI, but that might pass. You know, you could do that here too. We can put a lamp. I tried this too and I got, I don't know, car headlight. They didn't really come out very good. They are going to be initiating a credentials program for generative AI because this uses a lot of compute power. What that means is after you've used all of your credits, it's going to really slow things down, but it's not going to prevent you from using it. And they haven't even, it was supposed to happen by the 1st of the year. It hasn't. I think the new date is January 16th. You get, from what I've read, 1,000 credits a month, which is a lot. You'd have to be doing a lot of this stuff. I don't know. I don't think any of those actually work, but it's fun to play around with. Anybody been playing around with it? Have you done any cool stuff?
We have one person that said that she's used it some.
I'm curious, now that you guys have seen how easy it is to fix those problem pictures, you gonna start thinking about it in ways as photo editing instead of magic, mystery magic, right? So this image here, I feel like I don't have enough space. Like if I'm being compositionally critical about this, I really like it. I like the look of the horse, and I like her stare. I even like the horse going out off the screen here, but I wish there was a little bit more room at the top of her head. Well, generative AI is the perfect solution for this. The thing is, you're probably going to want to use the generative expand, which is where you take the crop tool and you expand. Why did you go away? Oh, I had the wrong tool. Deselect. I picked the wrong tool. So generative expand is when you use your crop tool like this and you add something. And up here, instead of the fill being the default transparent, you change it to generative expand. Don't put anything in the prompt. And it's like content aware fill, but better. It does a much, much better job. But the problem with it is that it's limited to the pixels. So if you do a full resolution image like this, it's going to be really soft when you zoom in. And if you're watching any tutorials on YouTube and they don't tell you that, then they're not doing their job, because they're showing it on a small screen. They're showing the image small and they're not zooming in, and they're like, wow, magic, look what we just did. And, you know, it does look like magic until you zoom in. There we go. Can you see that? This is the pixels, and this is the generative pixels. So until it gets better, which it probably will, or maybe it'll be like, you know, 10 credits to do it at a high resolution and 1 to do it at a low. I don't know. We have 3 different options here. A better way to do it is to just crop your image with the transparent, then use your selection tool, and, you know, somewhere around 1,000 pixels, and then and then just step it across. There are actions out there. Somebody's probably made an action you could download and run. I haven't done enough of it to really feel like I need an action like that, but there are actions that will run across your image and create this generative fill in small patches. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. That looks really good.
Got a couple of comments here. Somebody suggested that this could be usable for a canvas wrap.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's a great idea. It's perfect for that.
And then we had another comment that said generative fill and a mask are amazing. They have added so much to my daily editing. This presentation is a step above what we normally see. Thank you, Teresa.
Oh, thank you. That was really nice. I expanded my crop and I forgot to change this back to transparent. So it's actually going to go around and try and fill all of this. Kind of curious what it's going to do.
Yeah.
It will expand the horse. It'll create some kind of a horse for us, because I played around with this and I was like, wow, that's, you know, I mean, yeah, it's sitting on the edge of the image. It's not the focal point. You could totally get away with that. Maybe just cropping in a little bit.
Or continue.
Try to put a horse rider on there. You get some really some pretty wonky.
You could continue it and get a whole horse.
You could. Yeah, you could. It's completely changes everything about the way we think about our images. And I don't even know what to say about that. They are working on content credentials. Let me put that in my notes here someplace. If we come to window and we come down to content credentials, this one's still in beta, it's new. I imagine that if you are working for National Geographic or, you know, some publication like that, this is going to be huge. What you'll do is you'll turn it on to enable content credentials, and it will create metadata that's embedded in the image that shows every step of what you did. So it'll say what's AI, what was added. If you're doing a composite with multiple images, it will show all of that as well. I haven't actually played around with it yet. I just watched some tutorials on it. I don't really know that for us fine art photographers that it's something that we're really going to want for our own work. But I think it's really good to know that Adobe's working on this technology, because we won't ever know what's real or not.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already there. The other thing that I wanted to say about the generative content here is it does require an internet connection, because it is it's going out to the internet, the cloud, to get that information. It's sourcing the entire internet. In the case of Adobe, it's sourcing all of Adobe stock to find content. I see a question from Peggy about learning more about Photoshop for the iPad. I would jump right into YouTube and search Photoshop for the iPad, and also take a look at LinkedIn's courses. There's a lot of good content out there. What was I going to say? There is system requirements for generative on Adobe's help docs, so you might want to search that. I know Ralph said he can't use it because he has a vintage Mac. I'm not sure how new of a Mac you need for it to work, but you know, you have to be fairly current to be able to use these tools. They're worth it though. Let's pull up something else here. What's the new? What else do we want to work on? Oh, I wanted to work on this. Have any of you been out to Borrego Springs? Seen this?
Not recently, no.
So the whole desert floor in Borrego Springs is full of these just fantastic creatures. Blanking on the artist's name. Having a senior moment here. If somebody remembers, maybe you could put it in the chat. It's really a gift, I think, to the public to have this public art out there, and it's really fun to photograph. So I thought this one would be fun to play around with the different options for removing things. But the first thing I'm going to do, and it's not new, but it's just me being I really care about how my images being straight, and it's something that I am always critiquing when I'm doing judging. And I shot this with a pretty, I'm trying to unlock it. I shot this with a pretty wide angle lens, and this is a vertical pull, should be vertical. And this back here should be vertical. But if we come over here, you know, this is leaning in, and this is, you know, it's kind of got that keystoning effect because it's a wide angle. So I want to fix that by doing a Command T to go into free transform, and I unlock my layer. And then I'm going to use my Command key or Control key just to drag this corner out to straighten it. And it's really hard to tell if it's actually straight or not. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to turn my rulers on with a Command R, and then I'm going to pull a ruler out. Rulers are awesome for this. And I'll pull a ruler out over here just to, you know, just to keep myself honest. I put it on one of those. I don't know if you can even see that, but there's some posts back there. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll do a Command or Control, pull my Shift key down and just pull that out so that's straight up and down. Now I feel like the serpent's a little squatty, so I'm going to hold my Shift key down and just stretch it up a little bit so he looks more grand and you know, more big. That's not a word, but
More big.
more big. And then I don't need the guides now, so I'm going to do, actually we'll delete them. View guides, clear guides. So now we're ready to clean up the background. So we have a couple options for that. We have the spot healing brush tool. This has been around for a long time, and it does a really great job for things that are kind of floating like this, something small. We can just paint over it, and as soon as we release, it's going to disappear. It is great for pimples, spots, and divots and things like that. And I still find that most of the time, this is the tool I'm going to use for these small stuff because it's really fast and it does a really effective job. But if I've got something like this, let's say we want to take the whole road out back here. I don't know. We'll just try this, paint over the whole thing. When you start getting something like this, it's not bad. It's better than the last time I tried it, but it's not really that good either. I don't know what's happening here. So this is the kind of a situation where I would, I would switch to the, let's go into full screen mode here. I'd switch to the remove tool. Remove tool is using magic. It's using the artificial intelligence. So you use it the same way. I'll get a bigger brush and let's just paint over this whole area. Whoops. I'm using a stylus and it thinks I lifted. It did a good job with that. Let's get all of this out of there. Okay. I think it's getting pretty, it's because I'm using a stylus. It's thinking that I'm stopping my stroke. I don't know, it's magic. Like, there's no more excuses for having clutter in the background of your image. Just paint it out.
We had one participant say that Richard Bracetta, I'm not probably
That's
not
it.
pronouncing.
That is right. Richard
That's the name of
Bracetta.
the artist. And we had another member say that she's going down there in February.
February is the right time to go. The last time I was there was last June because I was on my way to Phoenix for Creative Pro Week, and can't remember if I don't think this was taken in June. But anyway, you can't see out of your car very long in June, so February is a good time. Okay, so the other thing that you can do with the object remove tool is that you don't have, this is new, is you can paint like a lasso. So let's say I want to get rid of this rock. I don't have to fill the whole rock in, I just have to come all the way around. It fills it in and then it removes it. Damn, that was amazing. Let's see if we can, I wonder if I use my mouse, if I'll be able to do this better. Switched, yeah, let's do this. All the way down, I'll let go. It should, see, it's going kind of slow. Look, it didn't completely kill that. In the old tool, the healing tool would have just smudged that out because when things are touching or overlapping, it doesn't know how to handle it. But the, what are we calling this? The remove tool, the new remove tool, it's using artificial intelligence to determine what should be there. It's not the spot healing brush tool is looking at the pixels right around what you've selected. And it's evaluating what's there and it's pulling that information and it's filling the hole in the middle. The remove tool is going out into the cloud and Adobe Stock and it's using its smarts to recreate that. So I think if we take this and just circle all the way around it and let go, I think it'll do a pretty good job. Oh my God, that's amazing. I mean, seriously.
That's more than pretty good.
That's how many years and years of clone stamp practice have I had? It's a skill that we don't need anymore. Well, that's not completely true. You still should always go around and clean things up, but I love doing that. I mean, I don't know about you. Some of you might feel like it's it's not a true image anymore because that road is there and there's things back there. But I don't care. That's not the way I saw it when I was standing there. I was looking at the serpent and how magical he was. I wasn't even looking at the post holding his chin up. So this is more representative of the way I saw the scene when I was standing there. And that's kind of the way I approach editing my images, is they're mine. So I don't really care if you come along and say, well, I know there was a road back there. The road was distracting from the image, so I wanted to take it out.
Yeah. Amazing.
Oh, Mike had a really, really good comment. You are right on, Mike. These are destructive edits. These are destructive edits. And if I wasn't talking too fast and trying to cover a lot of stuff, I wouldn't have missed that I should have duplicated my layer. My typical workflow is the first thing I do before I start doing retouching in Photoshop is I make a copy of my layer, or I create a new blank layer and I have sample all layers turned on top. And that's how you do it non-destructively. So Mike, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, if I create a new layer and I turn on sample all layers and I come down here and I say, let's get rid of this rock, then it is actually sitting on this layer, okay? The new contents on that layer. So that's how you do it the correct way. Even this rock here that's sitting right up against it, it should take it out. And it's not perfect, but nobody would ever notice that. Did a pretty good job. Good, good, good. I got a few things left. I know we're an hour and a half into it, which is, you guys want to see a few more things? Are you tired? Chuck, are you still awake? It's late where you are.
I'm still awake.
Let's keep going.
He's standing up. That's why he's awake.
He's doing some calisthenics.
Yeah.
Patrick says when you
I think we're good for a few more minutes, Teresa.
Okay, good. I do want to show how to do some lens blur in Photoshop. You got a couple options here. Patrick says if you do a generative fill and then want to open the image with a plugin, you have to flatten it. Yes, and your images will get, if you have generative fill layers, your images will get really big. So one thing you might want to do is delete the extra gen fill. So it gives you 3. If you choose one, go ahead and delete the other 2. I'm really in the practice of merging them. I create that retouch layer and I do all my work and I just keep merging them in. But it's however you want to work. If you're going to take the image into another application, it can't handle the generative fill layer. The iPad can't, and the I guess Photoshop on the web can. I haven't actually done it though. Okay, wanted to talk about lens blur in Photoshop. Couple different ways to do it. Let's take this bird from Safari Park. I live very close to the Safari Park. It's just over the hill, so I go over there quite often. This secretary bird is just a gorgeous bird that's really, really hard to capture in natural habitat. This is one of the best shots I have of it, and it's got this fence back here. So one way to use the newer lens blur, there's the older lens blur where you can use masks and stuff, and I'm not going to show that because that's older. But the newer ways, there's 2 of them, and one of them is to use camera raw. So it's essentially using the same feature that I showed you in Lightroom Classic. And to do that non-destructively, we want to first make our layer a smart object. Okay, so that protects the pixels. I call smart objects safe deposit boxes for your pixels. So whatever you do to this as a filter, it hangs on the outside and it doesn't actually damage the pixels. And then from here, we'll go to camera raw filter. And the camera raw is the same. I opened it on my other monitor. And I need to move this over. And this monitor is bigger, so I got to scale it down. Okay, so Camera Raw is the same as Lightroom Classic, has the same exact engine. In fact, Camera Raw now looks a lot like Lightroom, which freaked out a lot of people who never used Lightroom. But for those of us that have been using both Lightroom and Camera Raw, we were really happy about it. This layout's very Lightroom-like. So if we come down here, we'll find the lens blur, and we can apply lens blur to this. And it works exactly the same. And there are some benefits to doing it here. I'll show you that. Let's just blur it way out. And interesting, it did a better job. When I practiced this before, it lost part of the leg here. It didn't do a great job with the feathers, but overall, you know, it's pretty impressive. We can adjust this here. Let's go ahead and say, okay. Now, it's processing. The beauty of doing it this way inside of Photoshop is when you create a smart object and you apply a filter, it is a smart filter, and a smart filter has a mask. So what we could do, remember in Lightroom we didn't have a mask, is we could actually paint in black on this, nope, not on a new layer, on the mask. I'm painting on white. I need to switch my colors around. We can paint on the mask, and we can bring back, basically what it's doing is it's hiding the filter. And I am not doing a good job with this. I'm just trying to show you that that's a possible option of using that lens blur inside of Photoshop through Camera Raw instead of using it in Lightroom, is that you have that masking. There was one other way to do lens blur that I want to show you, and that is with a neural filter. Anybody gone into these neural filters? They have been around for a while now. A lot of them still say beta, and they keep changing them, like they're trying different things. And this one here, depth blur, it says beta, but it does a pretty nice job. Well, if we can say focus the subject, and then it's going to use artificial intelligence to decide what the subject is. Wow, that did a really nice job. And then we can crank the blur strength up here. And with this, what I kind of like about it is that you can even adjust, you know, the tones as well. Oops. I wanted to output that to another layer. So let's do that again. I'm going too fast because I'm getting tired. It's not what I wanted to do, Teresa. Filter, neural filters, slow down. Depth blur down here. We want to change this to a new layer. Focus the subject. Say okay. Okay, so now non-destructive, we have a new layer, and you can see, you know, that looks really good. It softened that up, and it did it really fast. Now, it's not perfect. Look at this. We don't want that, but this is Photoshop, so we can put a layer mask on it and then paint on that layer mask to bring back what it is that got messed up. So this is where always where working in Photoshop is superior to working in Lightroom, is that you have this control to mask your edits in and out. There's one last thing I'm going to show you. It's a perfect image to show you on. Gradients have been around for a really long time, but gradients got a major improvement just recently. I like to use curves to do like light painting or selective edits. So let's add a curve adjustment layer. When you add an adjustment layer, it automatically has a mask. The mask is white though, so it's not doing anything. And let's just darken this way down. So the background's really dark, just so that it's really easy for you to see. Maybe change the blend mode to luminosity so it doesn't whack the colors out. Then I'm going to go to the gradient tool, and I'm going to choose a radial gradient instead of a linear gradient. And I'm going to go from black to white, black to white, because black is going to hide. And I'm putting a spotlight on my flower. And what you weren't able to do that you can do now is this is live. This gradient is live. We can continue to edit it. I can even say, well, I don't really want circle. I want like a spotlight that's coming in from here. In the past with the gradient tool, you would have to create it and then delete it and create it again and delete it or paint it or whatever to get what you wanted. But now it retains this live ability to change it. As soon as I do paint on it, then it breaks out and it's not a live gradient anymore. But I think the gradient upgrade is huge and makes them really useful now. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there.
Okay, excellent. Does anybody have any more questions that can be answered expeditiously, so to speak?
Chuck is sliding. He's sliding
Yes.
down.
It's getting later and later.
Oh, you guys are a great group. This was a lot of fun. The last thing I can show you is that if I do, just going back to where we started with the clouds, if I do a save as, why are you going so slow? Because it knows the night's over and I'm tired. This is where you have the option to save it on your computer. And I have a lot of students that they don't read their screens. They're just like, oh, save. And then they can't find their image. It's like, well, where did it go, right? So pay attention. If you're here, you're not saving it to your computer. You're saving it in the cloud, Cloud Docs. If you want to save it on your computer, click this button over here. So I hope you guys got some like high level ahas, like, oh, I got to go take a closer look at that tool. I didn't go too deep in anything, but I wanted to give you some things to maybe play around with to go explore that you might not have known to go looking for before.